Hello and welcome to Professor M Explains. Today, I'm going to talk about the importance of developing emotional competence. Now, I know. My students for the term in which I am recording this are like, wait a minute, whoa, this is not in the syllabus. You are exactly right. It is not in the syllabus. And as I was explaining to one of our incredible students just today at the time of this recording, that this is a shell class that all of our incredible instructors and professors have. And we are able to tailor this class to meet the needs of everyone involved. Okay. So bear with me as I tailor this to meet not your needs of the syllabus. Okay. Not your needs of getting a great grade in this class, not your needs of what's going to be on the exam, Professor M. This is a fundamental skill that you will take beyond this class. When I tell you that in 20 years, you're going to be like, oh my goodness, where's Professor M? Let me find her on social media. Let me tell her that while this was not in our syllabus and this was not something that we tested on, I am so super excited that I plugged in, tuned in, and paid attention to this here lecture on chapter 9, where we're talking about developing emotional competence. This is so important when we're talking about the importance of having meaningful interpersonal communication exchanges with people. As we tie this and connect this with the previous chapter in the previous lecture, when we talk about cultural identity and cultural context and the various differential factors of communicating in terms of understanding the cultural context of communication, you have to have emotional competence. Yes, you do, to be able to hang in there and hold on when you realize that you touched your ear and it actually insulted the person that you're seeking to have a meaningful, productive communication exchange with. So let's talk about the importance of emotional competence. Just really quickly, this area, this chapter, it talks about defining emotional competence, the 4 principles of emotional competence, benefits of emotional competence, gender and emotional competence, helping children develop emotional competence. Emotional competence is super important if you are going to have meaningful exchanges with one another. When we define emotional competence, we are looking at exactly what is emotional intelligence and emotional competence. Defined, it means and represents let me repeat. Emotional intelligence is defined as the capacity for recognizing our own feelings and those of others, motivating ourselves and managing emotions effectively in ourselves and in our relationships. Whereas emotional competency is defined by our text as knowing how to express emotions to fit the situation, the culture, and personal needs, understanding how to discern one's emotional state and others' emotional states, understanding the vocabulary of emotion, coping with adverse and pleasurable emotional situations and conditions, using emotions strategically and at appropriate times, as well as developmental as well as being a developmental process. So we understand that emotional competence as defined, the underlying principles of emotional competence consist of 4 areas. Emotional competence requires emotional awareness. You have to be aware and have the ability to identify, label, and articulate your emotions, as well as decode the emotional expressions of others. Emotional competence also requires the ability to appreciate the fact that other people experience multiple emotions simultaneously. The second area is emotional perspective, taking on the notion of empathy. You have to be empathetic in order to gain and increase your emotional competence. The third principle of emotional competence requires cultural sensitivity. This ties into our previous lecture, in which we have to display an understanding that there are different emotional cultures and emotional levels within cultures, and we have to have the ability to follow prescribed rules in communicating with people of different cultural identities that are different than ours. The fourth area is emotional competence requires strategic expression. Strategic expression is the crowning glory of emotional competence, what our book describes as the ability to regulate your emotional experience and expression in adaptive and beneficial ways. There are also benefits of emotional competence. The ability to understand that it ties into your professional environment. It ties into the quality of interpersonal relationships and communication exchanges that you have with one another. So understand that there are benefits to understanding your level of emotional intelligence, your emotional competence, as well as understanding that social media can also have an impact on your emotional competence. When you are in the midst of looking at how other people are living, how other people are perceiving, or their perceived persona on social media, how they are happy all the time. No. Again, understand that social media can impact your emotional competence when it comes to you showing up as your authentic self in your interpersonal communication exchanges. So just make sure that you are aware of this, that you understand also that emotional competence is something that it should be an entire course in and of itself, because it ties in to our ability to process and handle both social and cyberbullying. Also, I want to interject in here that it ties into our ability to handle ghosting in relationships. We've talked about that in class and use that as an example. So understand that emotional competency requires a multitude of skills, but for simplicity purposes, the 4 skills that I've talked about are the emotional competency basis of emotional awareness, taking root in empathy, being culturally sensitive to others and their levels of emotional competence, and then also having a strategic expression to that. So in summary, we want to talk about the benefits of emotional competence. Our text discusses the professional benefits, but for this area, we again referring back to earlier lectures where we talked about the professional and corporate benefits of being able to emotionally understand that when you are in a place, we talked about our personal identification, our self concepts, our personal constitutions. Is someone violating your personal constitution? Is there something in that relationship that you could deem beneficial to your boundaries that you've set up for yourself and your CPS project? Your personal constitutions. Is there a benefit there? If not, then do you want to express at that moment the emotional competence to sever that relationship if you don't have the proverbial golden ticket? We've talked about the golden ticket mentality in class when it comes to interpersonal communication on a professional level. And when you perceive yourself in an employment or a job or an intern situation where the benefits do not outweigh the time, effort, commitment, and the quality of work that you are providing, is there a balance or an imbalance of work-life exchange there? Again, how do you handle that? Emotional competence is super important. Be aware of that. The social benefits of emotional competence, handling situations such as cyberbullying or even road rage or being ghosted by a friend or someone that you're seeking to have a partnered relationship with. Also, self-guided benefits. So emotional competency and beyond, as children, young adults, and in our social media lives, Do know that it's all relevant at home, at school, social media, cyberbullying, as well as ghosting. And in summary, emotional competence is truly the foundation of successful human relationships. It's the bridge that connects us with one another. And as we grow and we learn and we become more aware of our emotions and why we feel the way we do in certain situations, we as a people come to understand what triggers our feelings and how those feelings affect our ability to be who we wish to be and become. With self-awareness comes awareness of others' emotions. Remember that we learn to read others' emotional expressions, both verbal and nonverbal cues, and develop an appreciation for why they are feeling what they're feeling at that present moment in that exchange. Now, while this emotional perspective taking allows us to be more empathetic and caring for other individuals, we also have to interject into this analogy and this analysis that it is important that we do not allow anyone to violate our personal constitutions, what we call, and how it measures up to the emotional competence of delivering that exchange to the person on the other side in which you are having that interpersonal exchange with, to make sure that while you are being empathetic and caring, they are also in exchange being empathetic and caring to your needs at that particular moment. Now, as we mature and become more emotionally competent, we as a people learn a variety of ways to strategically express ourselves, to be more sensitive to cultural expectations, as well as for emotional expression. So while many of us learned emotional competence through informal education or in our homes, on social media, and our circles, from our teachers, our mentors, people and young adults can also learn these skills from social and emotional learning programs in school, is what our textbook talks about, but we are learning them in our academic environment right now. When we talked about in class today how we have noticed that we've progressed and we've changed as a human being, evolving in college and in this academic setting, we're not the same people that we were 12 weeks ago when we left home, when we left our comfortable surroundings. And so while we have valuable resources that we can tap into and tune into to develop our emotional competence, we also, as an academic platform in a community, can tap into one another to grow and expand our levels of emotional competence. One more thing I want to mention before we close out this discussion is the importance of knowing that your emotional competence will expand and grow over your lifespan. Do know that what you are not emotionally competent in today, which may be, for example, handling a bad grade. How do you handle and how do you even categorize a bad grade? We talked about this in earlier lectures and how to handle this emotionally so that we have healthy inner talk. Emotional competency is also connected to our healthy inner talk. And what are we saying in our sacred space to ourselves that will help us increase our emotional intelligence with regards to particular subjects and areas, as well as increase our emotional competence? So with that, I thank you for your attention. Thank you for your time. And I can't wait to delve in to the next chapter in which we discuss developing conflict competence. Thank you so much. Bye for now.